All right, while we're waiting for others to join in, I'd like to quickly begin the sessions for this afternoon, mentioning the topic for today's webinar is Get Ready for Our Law Society Audits. We are going to be recording the session. The session will be available on our YouTube platform as early as Monday. And Stephanie has shared the attendance link for today's CPD session. The title has also been entered here. For the ones who have joined in late, I request you to look into the chat window with the details for Law Society Audit. Get Ready for Law Society Audit is the title. And the link is also going to be entered here once again, so that ones who have joined in after the chat was entered will get access to it once again. All right, and I would also like to take an opportunity to apologize that we missed to send in the reminder, but as I already mentioned, our webinar website has all the details about today's CPD session. I request all of you to take a minute every Thursday or Friday, whenever you get a chance before Friday 2 p.m. to check whether the topic for today is a CPD topic and if it's going to be helpful for you attending this webinar. And even better solution would be if you can download a toolbox on your Chrome window or your Chrome browser. There's an extension for uLaw Toolbox, and if you download that Chrome extension, you would be getting reminders from uLaw for all CPD sessions. So that way, 15 minutes before, you will be able to get the reminder to join in for the webinar. I already have questions coming in saying, is it a professional? Yes, it is a professional CPD session. And Roger, we don't, for your future reference, we don't do any substantive hours. We only give professionalism credits. All right, I think there are enough people joined in. We should quickly get started. I'll be doing it till 3:05, so we need about an hour. So don't worry about the time unless you're able to spare that additional 5 minutes for us. Thank you all for joining in once again. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Gayatri, alias G3 from uLaw Support and uLaw Client Success. We would be handling today's session, and this webinar is going to be recorded and available as early as Monday on our YouTube platform. And the topic and attendance links, everything has been entered in the chat window. Don't panic in case you don't see the chat. Maybe you would have joined in slightly later after we entered. Stephanie would probably enter the attendance link and the topic for today's session every 15-20 minutes once, at least 3 times throughout this webinar. And we also want to let you all know that if you're a regular webinar attendee, please remember that uLaw only gives out CPD hours for professionalism credits. We don't do substantive hours, so just for your information, we only give professionalism CPD credits. All right, so almost 2:10. So looking into the agenda for today's webinar, as every other webinar, we do have a set agenda, especially for CPD sessions. We do have a nice big agenda. So let's try and cover as much as possible in here. So the topic, as you all can see, would raise a little bit of panic in us because it's get ready for Law Society Audit. Now, I know that audit by itself is a little panicking word. Internal audit, external audit, there are different types of audit, right? But something that gives us an additional, maybe I won't term it as fear, but consciousness towards our practice is Law Society Audit. And in case of Law Society Audit, there are certain things that you have to be prepared, that you have to follow, that you have to make sure that you're, implementing it in your daily practice, in terms of your, financial practice, in terms of your general practice, in terms of your technology, in terms of professional mandate. So there are different types of rules and guidelines and conduct that you need to follow, which is in place, provided by Law Society, of course, for your respective province that you're practicing from. Now, in today's webinar, we're going to make sure that we are looking into these set of rules and guidelines that you are required to at least be aware of and try to implement so that you have a smooth audit process while you are being audited. And there are these type of generic questions that you might have throughout this webinar, which I definitely encourage all of you to put in a chat window. Whatever steps can taken, she will take in anything in specific to this topic. I would request all of you to put in the chat window as we progress, but I will take it in the last 5 minutes. And any in specific query that is probably related to your accounting, or you need some support, or you need some advice, guidance, you can always reach out to us on support@uLawPractice.com. Now, with this being a CPD session, I would just like to quickly jump into this agenda that we're seeing here for different areas of review. What are you required to do? What is the purpose as a legal practitioner? How would you pass an audit? How would you manage an audit without any issues? So first of all, understanding what is an audit, how often you might be audited. These are certain questions that might come into your mind when we are in this slide. So first of all, how often you're going to be audited is definitely not something that we can probably judge saying, oh, you know what, you might be audited in the next 6 months, you might be audited in the next 12 months. It's something that is, it's still a questionable thing for every practitioner, but on an average basis, or from at least what we've seen in the past experience, we see that the first 18 months when you start a practice, you're more prone to be audited. Probably the auditors or the Law Society would like to see if you have understood these purposes that we're going to be discussing, these code and conduct guidelines that Law Society has laid out. Have you followed them? Have you implemented them in your practice? That's why they give you almost 12 to 18 months of your first few months into practice to see whether you're able to follow them. Now, if you have followed them, if you have implemented them, I don't think there's going to be any problem with your audit, because auditors are not going to ask for anything new but what they have given out in the guidelines. So we are going to be seeing a little bit of all these guidances or guidelines, whatever you can term it as. We're going to be seeing how you can detect these problems that are underlying in each situations for technical software, or accounting or finances, whatever. So to understand these, let's get the basics right. So what is an audit? What is the purpose? Why is it you? Why is it not me? All these questions. Audit supports and promotes very high quality in your firm, making sure your law firm is able to showcase all of these guidelines that you're supposed to implement in terms of your trust and your general, in terms of maintaining records, in terms of recording the transactions, in terms of ensuring you have rendered the services to your client in a very open and in a very audited manner, making sure that everything you have conducted in this practice is thoroughly checked, is thoroughly audited before you go into the next level. And why you? Me? It could be anyone. So it is just made sure that sometimes it is random, sometimes it could be spot audits, making sure that the integrity of your law firm, everything in terms of, again, like I said, filing, recording, accesses, the financial statements, everything as per the records, requirements that have been maintained is also going to be witnessed during this process. So when you're being audited, what are certain things that you are needed to keep in mind, and what are certain things that you're actually being audited on, because audit could be as extensive as possible. It is very it is something that is very specific to your firm. It could be specific to a type of practice. It could be specific to how old or how new your practice is. It is very subjective. It cannot be said on a very clear platform saying that, you know what, this is how you might be audited. This is how you will be audited rather. But instead, understand that an audit, first of all, can be in any form. It could be a spot audit, it could be a practice review, it could be something regarding only your financial bookkeeping guidelines. It could be a professional management. There could be different types of audit. And in each of these type of audits, I feel that you should be adhering to all of them, or you should be addressing to all of these types of reviews at one time, so that when you're being audited, you're just going to be making sure that all of these avenues or areas are covered in your practice. So that if they ask you for practice review or financial or spot or technology, anything, you should be ready anytime. So that is what we are going to be discussing in this slide, where when it comes to practice review, it is about, is your firm properly managing your clients in terms of client intake, in terms of conflict check, in terms of handling retainers, deposits, giving invoices, issuing receipts. So there's so many other things that we probably discussed in the previous CPD session at beginning of this month, or beginning of end of last month, where we spoke about different types of documents that you have to generate. So practice review is about different types of documents that you're being generating for properly managing your clients' matters and procedures. So making sure you have everything in place when it relates to a client matter management. That's what we call it as, practice review. And when it comes to financial review, it is even more in detail. It is going to be drilling down into information such as the trust and general accounts. Are all the deposits and withdrawals into your trust and general has been handled properly? It has been recorded in a timely fashion, in a timely manner, making sure that every debit and a credit that comes into your trust and general has been recorded in your books, so that your monthly reconciliations for your bank's respective bank accounts has taken place. And that is what is financial bookkeeping guidelines telling you about, reconciling your trust and general on a monthly basis. Now, many of us do it with trust. Some of us might miss it with general. There is no say that the auditor would only ask you for trust and they would not ask you for a general. Yes, of course, Law Society says that your trust needs to be reconciled for the previous month end before the next month 25th or the following month 25th. Now, let's say we are in February. It's already Feb 10th. And by Feb 25th at the max, you have to reconcile your trust and general for Jan 31st, 2022. Oh, sorry, 2023. So sorry, still in 2022. So while we are talking about that part, we need to make sure that, your trust and general is at par, being reconciled on a monthly basis. While that is done, your financial review is definitely taken care of. And when, of course, that process will have many subdivisions, like ensuring your journals, your ledgers, your other statements are also linked to your financial review, which will fall into place as you keep adding transactions into trust and general respectively. While practice review is done, financial review is done. Now, when we talk about technology, now we all live in an era where everything is based out of technology. There's nothing that is not done that doesn't involve anything that is not technology based. Let's say Wi-Fi, let's say laptop, let's say printer, let's take going on cloud, storing documents on cloud. Everything today is having a bit of technology in everything you do. I don't think, we could all manage ourselves if we don't have this technology today in place. But what Law Society says is, when it comes to technology, you should make sure that the safety guidelines in the applications you use, or in the, in the system that you use, everything is safeguarded. It's having its own safety rules and regulations in place, and that you're making sure that you're not failing any of those rules or those technology guidelines that needs to be followed. And one of the most important that comes to top of my mind is ensuring that you have a backup of your data, and ensuring that, at such times when your system fails or something happens, you're able to access your backup of data and reach out to your, whatever documents on time. So making sure that the technology review audit is about, you're maintaining the safety standards for using any such applications that is tech-based in your firm. Now, for professional and time management review, this is something that sometimes most of us give least importance to, I feel, because let's say, we have followed the technology review separately. We have followed the financial review. I've done my monthly reconciliations, G3. Now, what more do I need? I'm in compliance with Law Society already, right? No, that's not really it. It is more than that. That is why we have separate types of review. That is why we have separate types of audit. So you need to make sure that you follow the combination of these reviews. You are able to achieve practice review. You're able to achieve financial review. You're able to achieve technology review. And at the same time, you're able to achieve professional and time management, making sure you're able to complete your CPD hours, making sure you're aware of the professional code and conduct guidelines that has been recently updated, making sure of all legislations that you are aware of in the recent times. So you need to be thinking about audit every day, on an everyday aspect, and build your practice in such a way that end of the day, you would be acting as your own auditor. That's how I always advise my clients. I tell them that you are your own auditor. You need to make sure that end of the day, you're able to complete your books, you're able to analyze, you're able to, make sure you're within the code and conduct of guidelines for the practice review, for the financial review, and the professional and time management, and that your firm is taking steps towards it on a day-to-day basis. That way, you're able to build the firm on a complete end-to-end practice management, review that you can do for your own self. While we know what are the different types of audit, now how do we prepare for audits? Now I know that I have to be ready from all aspects of practice, of financial, of technology, time, professional management, everything. But now how do I prepare for audit? Okay, so audits, like I already said, they're not designed to basically panic you or to make sure that you're going to be scared of them. Nothing of that sort. It's more to detect your mistakes in an early mistakes or issues or whatever you can term it as in an early stage, and that you're going to be making sure that you have a healthy law firm. Even when you're being audited, that's a mistake that most of us panic. Oh, I have an audit, I have to submit the documents. Yes, you might have an audit. Like I said, you might have an audit any time in your practice. But if you are following this slogan, or I would probably term it as slogan or whatever you want to call it, as a mantra or whatever, at the bottom of the page here that says you need to be thinking about the audit every day and build compliance into the DNA of the firm's daily execution, which means that you behave in a way that you might be audited any day, any hour. That's part audit, right? So making sure you have everything in place, and you have to start from day one and do it every day on a religious basis, making sure you practice procedure on a regular basis, on a daily, weekly, quarterly. Have a checklist that, okay, so when it comes to closings, I would do on a daily basis. I would close my bank accounts on a daily basis, or I would close at least my clients' accounts on a daily basis. I would close my office accounts on a weekly basis. I would do my reconciliations on a monthly basis. I would do my HST on a quarterly basis, or any taxes on a quarterly basis. And I will do my annual report filing on a yearly basis. So if you make a checklist of your practice requirements on a regular basis, I don't think there is going to be trouble when you're facing an audit. And the checklist should be, like I already mentioned here, you can very clearly see that the last point here that says start with the checklist. Now, I said that the checklist can be based on your practice requirements, right? So your practice might be something that you're rendering services to your clients on a on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. So some people might have recurring clients. You need to ensure that you are managing your client matter management, their financial management, and the practice management all in one place. But you provide the checklist. You start with the checklist and make sure that it's as small as reviewing the bank statements, recording the debits and the credits into the respective accounts through either client matter management or through accounting. It could be for an office expense, could be for an income, other income, making sure all your monthly financial checklist, all the ledger, journals, reconciliation statements that we discussed. Now, if you're using a program like uLaw, all of this, trust me, are readily available in the program for you to access anytime. But for you to access and download the statement with proper numbers, you have to give us, or any program that you're using, or anything that you're using, let's say even an Excel spreadsheet, if you need 1 + 1 = 2, you need to type 1 + 1, right? You need to give the input in order to get an output. I took a very basic example, but I'm telling you, if you need the trust ledgers and journals, you need to make sure that the inputs are your weekly bank accounts validation checklist. That's where it flows in from. So that's why I said, do it daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly. So ensuring all your year-end is also taken care in this process, right? So this is how small you start off preparing for an audit. And of course, making sure that you are recording them on a day-to-day basis. If you ask me personally, I would say on a day-to-day basis, pick up your whatever tool that you're using to record the transactions. Needs to be done on a daily basis, verified on a weekly basis, reconciled on a monthly basis, generating documents on a quarterly basis, and annual report would be like literally taking you few seconds to minutes. Trust me. I mean, seconds would be a little exaggeration, but at least few minutes, not more than 20 to 25 minutes. I feel that if you have everything in place recorded, that's all you need time to fill an annual report for, right? All right, so the next one here is going to be talking in detail about various areas of audit. One of them is practice management checklist, and then we have financial management checklist. So these two things are very important, especially hand in hand. They go hand in hand. If you have a clean practice management checklist, and your financial management is going to be falling into place very easily. So let's say your practice management checklist hasn't probably having all these transactions, but making sure you have all of these going forward could be when you have a simple conversation with the client, let's say this is about client matter management, and you need to make sure when it comes to client management, these are certain things that you're reviewing and recording on a regular basis, like the docket. When you handle a docket, you take a note of it, and whether you're charging the bill or not, you need to make sure that the docket is being added on a regular basis, and handling of retainers by depositing all the all the data is needed to be adding in, and making sure that all the joint retainers needs to also be added in here. Let's say you have a joint retainer, and you need to add in the details of the other parties associated here. A simple retainer letter will bring up and address both details or both the parties' details on it, and record the cash if paid into trust, and it fits into cash as a cash into trust, making sure it's been added in the last 24 hours, it has been entered in there, and making sure that on a regular basis you provide your clients with receipts, the monthly, quarterly statements, and also ensuring that all the letters are being given to them on a regular basis. Okay. And one other thing is making sure a good, well-reviewed engagement letters and non-engagement letters is required. Like, for example, making sure that you have completed a file. You need to make sure you're giving a closing letter to the client. Or if you have not engaged with the client, you need to make sure you're giving them a non-engagement letter. Especially if they're a ghost client, you have to make sure that they are not going to be bothering you in the future, or you don't have any hold, they don't have any hold on you. So making sure that all your communications with client service is very important. This is what the slide talks about, right? From the time you engage with the client to whether you engage or non-engage. And if you engage, to the time you work on the file, from handling retainer letters to joint retainers to giving them all their monthly, quarterly documents, and finally closing the matter with a proper closing letter is what we talk about, a proper practice management checklist. Because the practice management checklist, sometimes a lot of us stop with retainers or at the maximum invoice. We don't go beyond that. At the maximum we do is probably invoicing, receipts, and retainer letters, conflict check. But there are things more than that, like the monthly reviews of invoices, and then the bills and bill of cost, settlement statements, summaries that you have to provide to the client. And if it's an ongoing matter, they demand that from you. They have the right to receive all those quarterly documents. So you have to understand the quarterly documents and go from there. Now, besides that, please make sure that you are having all of these details on a regular basis, and that the file checklist is being updated, and you all follow the checklist on a regular basis. Now, moving on to the next one, which is a little bit continuation of the client service and communication, which is matter management. Of course, under matter management, it is an extension of maintaining a good client relationship. Under client relationship, we spoke about how do you intake a client and how do you maintain the communication and client services with them. But under matter management, it's about handling the file, how do you name the file, and do you have a good cross-indexing in place? Do you have a good organization of files in place? Are you creating proper retainer letters? What are the kind of terminologies and what are the kind of probably terms and conditions that you're including in the retainer letter? And most important of all is, if you have several files in place at a time, are you properly closing them? Are you being able to keep the active files organized so that when you have to access a file, or let's say your auditor is randomly asking you for 5 files. You have 500 files in place, and you're going to take time to choose the active files, closed files, and archive files. But if you have to, or if you happen to have this list in place, you're going to be easily able to open all the files and choose the 5 files from active files, 5 random files from closed files, and 5 random files from archive files. So this way, a proper maintaining of a proper status of the files is really important, and making sure that they go through a proper closure by giving them the status, the statement of activity, what is happening in their account, and their trust account and general account, the ledgers that contains the status of the money in the trust and general respectively, bill of cost, settlement statements, everything includes. So a matter management is an extended version of course, your client services and communication, but you need to make sure that each of these files that you handle, right from the time numbering them or cross-indexing them to the time you give them a closing letter, there are certain things that you need to follow that we discussed here, which is to be kept in mind while you're maintaining a file. Some of us give a file number, but we sometimes tend to mark the status of the file. So the matter status includes like active, close, archive. Those are small things. Like in uLaw, it's very simple. You can click on mark as and always close a file when you're done with it. I don't see many of you doing it, but I really recommend a lot of you to do it, so that, like I said, when you're being audited, you can straight away access the active files and give them 5 active files or closed files and go on from there. You don't have to sit and search amongst several other files that you have, know unknowingly whether it's open or closed, right? Now, a little bit more further down about retainer letter. Like this is part of, again, client service and matter management. Retainer letter, most of us, this is one of the first few engagement, probably the client-facing documents that you have with the client, because engagement letter is where you typically, tell a client what are the terms and conditions when with regards to this specific matter, and how do you capture them and show it to them on the retainer letter. So are you properly capturing whether you have to charge them through a retainer, or are you going to directly let them know whether this is going to be through general account, you're going to be invoicing them and receiving through general account. So these are certain things that you need to probably handle right from day one, and making sure that follow that procedure is also important. And when you build a retainer agreement, of course, there are some scope that you need to keep in mind. And when you're being audited, the auditor would like to see whether you're covering that scope in the nature of your work. Let's say your retainer agreement says you collect a retainer that also includes charging for disbursements. Some say it excludes disbursements, so disbursements will be paid as a replenishment to the retainer. And some don't follow what the retainer letter says. So that is what the auditor would like to verify, cross-checking with the bank statement and asking them, referring to the various ledgers and journals, whether you have followed the respective fee structure that you have mentioned on your retainer letter. You need to clearly state everything possible so that all the legal counsel assistance rates and they're all very clearly jotted down in your retainer letter, and that your client is aware of it. And when auditor cross-checks that, they're able to also see that you've implemented that in your practice. So this way, your retainer should also have a section that covers charges that can occur due to disbursements that I just spoke about. So you should also maintain receipts for each retainer that you receive. Now, if you're using uLaw, you have a separate tab called Receipt tab beside invoice. I request all of you to use that tab each time you receive a retainer, or even when you're adding a retainer payment into the program, you would have a tiny little receipt box beside cancel. Try to use that also. So at least download them for your records purposes if you're not doing it so far, and issue it to the client with the proper date of deposit and other details, and making sure that you're capturing all disbursements into trust and general respectively. Now there's definitely a different CPD altogether, which talks about disbursements demystified. I think it's coming up sometime in March, if I'm not wrong. Refer to our webinar website. But yeah, about disbursements, I think you should follow the bank. If you follow the bank, it'll lead you to a way how to record it. If you have, because there are options that says, hey, have you paid it from trust or general? How would you like to record it? That's where it all begins, right? When you pay it out from trust, you enter it as if it's paid from trust. Now, if it's paid from general, you will enter as if it's paid from general and it's moved from trust to general, and you pay yourself for the payment that you have made from the general account. Now, making sure the disbursements are that you have incurred has been recorded and recovered properly, and also the cost of recovery has also been captured with appropriate taxes, etc. So these three slides that we just spoke about is client service communication, matter management, and handling retainer. They all go hand in hand, but I feel sometimes we tend to miss one or two points that, you know, we might overlook on it. So I request all of you to, it all starts with checklist. If you have a checklist, trust me, there's no way you're going to lose it. And in uLaw program, you of course have a checklist tab under the compliance file checklist. So make sure you use the file checklist, or from what we discussed today also as well, if you're not a uLaw user, you'll have an idea as to what are the type of checklists that you need to maintain. And for the financial management checklist, which is something that we're all, you know, more worried about because it talks numbers. Sometimes, you know, I'm allergic to numbers as well. But I think financial management is something that is what you record, that gets transformed into these statements. So when your inputs are appropriate and accurate, matching to the corresponding bank statements, I don't think there's going to be any issue in terms of your review. So when it comes to financial management checklist, the very basic thing is, of course, raising an invoice, because only when you raise an invoice that that accounts receivable gets registered. So I'm not going too much into details as to how it is done, etc., but I'm going to tell you why it is done. So when you raise an invoice, your accounts receivable gets captured. So there is, of course, fee that needs to be paid to yourself, and the money needs to be moved from trust to general, or you get paid directly into the general. It's up to you. It's definitely depending upon the procedure that you follow. But while making an invoice, are you ensuring to raise an invoice on a timely manner? Those are certain things that auditor likes to see. They don't want to see that you received a payment on 5th of February and you raised an invoice on 25th of February. That's not what we want, right? Because why would you receive a payment before you raise an invoice? So make sure you always raise an invoice in a timely fashion, at least on the day you receive a payment. The workflow is actually this way, that you create a client, you add a matter, you, of course, add in a few dockets, raise an invoice, and then you get a payment into your general account, whether it's from trust to general or whether it's into general directly. Make sure you raise an invoice on a timely fashion. And our tax is being recorded properly, making sure that respective provincial taxes, respective, if you're a new practitioner up to $32,000, I think you're until you reach that amount, you don't have to charge taxes. So you're waived off from that, making sure that you're recording all such details appropriately. And if your client has any concerns, making sure that you address it is very important. So invoice balance, are you able to see the invoice balances? Making sure whether the invoice balance report is being generated from time to time. If you're a uLaw user, you'll find invoice balance report by client, by matter under the accounts tab. So make sure you find it, and you're able to address if there are any amounts pending trust transfer sitting in them. Please transfer them today, because you're eligible to do that. So why not do it? And make sure that if there's any pending that your client owes you, that you're following up with your client to get the invoice balance paid off. And getting paid from trust and getting money into general are two different things, guys. Sometimes people confuse saying that, you know what, I'm getting money into general, but I also have money in trust. So how is that possible? So if you have money in trust, you're going to do a trust transfer. It's not a trust payout. You're not just paying out of trust account, but you also have to get the money into general. So making sure that you are paying your disbursements for certain from your trust with the money that is available in trust, or you're using your general account to pay certain type of disbursements, and you're invoicing your client to transfer the money from trust to the general. So ensuring that you're not withdrawing from trust is always your another mantra. I think you should all keep in mind that your trust balance should be verified in the trust ledger each now and then, to make sure whether you can use your trust account to withdraw money or to pay a disbursement. Or of course, you can always use your general and get paid into trust or general respectively. So there are certain points in this checklist that we've discussed here for you to keep in mind, to have a review of your client's invoicing, because invoicing is one of the first few steps that you have to keep in mind to handle better trust accounts and general accounts. Because everything else is only statements and documents and procedures. But before that is where the input gets transformed into outputs that you're seeing right here. Your trust account, your general account, your taxes, whether you're maintaining trust ledgers, general ledgers, same way trust payment receipts, general payment receipts, making sure that their journals are all recorded. You know, if you're transferring money from trust to general, all Form 9As have been in place. They have been generated in place. All your monthly trust comparisons and general comparisons have been done. So when you take trust and general, they are same to same, except for a few things like, you know, a trust could have a bank error, a general doesn't have a bank error, because only trust, if you have any office expense done on trust, is a bank error. But general could have office expenses also other than your client expenses and your client payments. Now, taxes, are you maintaining records of taxes received and paid, whichever province you're from, making sure the respective provinces are being, maintained respectively? And are you reviewing your technology to do all this on a timely manner? Because how else are you going to sit and do this? So let's see how you manage your client updates and the technology in the next two slides. Now, before I proceed further, just quickly reiterating the topic for today's session is how to get ready for a Law Society audit. And I think Steph has shared links a few times over here. Thank you, Steph. Get ready for Law Society audit is a 1-hour CPD session. It is only professional, some CPD credits, and please make sure that all of you click on the attendance link to grab your attendance later. And we have discussed a few important slides in the last few minutes. I'm currently talking about how can you manage your client updates and review your technology using a practice management like uLaw. And keep in mind that you are going to be handling these by yourself. Some of you might have an assistant, some of you might have an accountant, a bookkeeper, but you as a legal practitioner, are you reviewing these points? Are you keeping in mind these points? How frequently are you doing it? Definitely, point number one is to clarify the first stage, which is your invoicing, because those are client-facing documents, making sure your client is satisfied, you have fulfilled all the points in there for the compliance part of it, statement of activity, statement of accounts, bill of costs, settlement statements. These are a few important points that you can keep in mind, because we're also used to giving invoices and receipts, but there are more things to do or to show your clients other than invoicing. They would like to see what has happened in their trust in general. So the statement of the settlement statement would give them an idea as to what has happened in their accounts. And do you have standard procedures to do it? How often do you do it? Do you do it through email, or do you verbally converse with them? Do you send them the invoices or the documents? The settlement statements, etc. How do you do this? Now, besides this, you have standard procedures that you have to follow, making sure that in your checklist you're following them on a weekly basis or monthly basis or quarterly basis. So make sure that you send out an email. Some things are okay verbally, but I always feel a written concern or a communication goes into records, and you always have a proof while you're being audited. You can pick up the trail and use it. Now, besides that, we are so keen in opening a matter, but sometimes we miss the closure procedure. So try and follow the closure procedure, because that would give you a way to maintain the records in a way that when you're being audited, you can pull up the documents end to end. You're not going to miss any statements or records. A matter right from the time you intake a client to a time a matter closure letter has been prepared. If you follow the checklist, if you follow the methodology, whatever method you might adopt, like I said, you could do it on a monthly basis, weekly basis, quarterly basis, whatever procedures that you adopt, you will end up with a more clear vision. When it's not only just you, we're talking about the auditors who would have much more clear vision on what practice you're following and whether you are able to abide to the code and conduct of the guidelines that Law Society has laid out. So while you're managing your client updates, let's talk a little bit about how do you also decide upon a technology. How prepared are you in, when a technology works, when a technology doesn't work? Of course, when a technology works, very, very happy, because you have everything in place. That's what you're using to generate documents, to record details, to, have a backup of everything. But when it fails on you, like, let's say, your computer, the system is on computer, the system fails, or there's something that you are not able to access to the one on your system. What do? You have a backup of your computer data. Are you able to have a robust security, or your document management? Are they all on cloud? Is the cloud system that you're using being secured? Is your practice management just a practice management or a legal accounting software also, which is highly secured, which is like, for example, if you take uLaw, ours is, we call it as a bank-like security. When, I don't know how many of you have faced issues if you're a uLaw user. A lot of you have been complaining to us saying, hey, G3, you know what, this one-time password that we get, the two-factor authentication takes a couple of minutes of mine every time I log in. I'm like, hey, you know what, a couple of minutes is really worth it. I know you're getting into a call with a client. I know you might be in your court, but I know this is going to be going a long way for your practice management security. It helps you to be having your data in a more secured environment, and that you're not prone to any security issues. So the software is more secured, and it's available for you with all the the securities that I'm talking or like OTP or two-factor authentications that we run across. So making sure that backup and security procedure on the technology that you're using, it's not only the legal practice management, it's also, let's say, your document management. In uLaw, we have document management that is combined with Google and OneDrive, or that be powered with Google and OneDrive. So if you're using something like that, there's going to be no problem, because again, it is linked to uLaw, and uLaw already has a two-factor authentication. So your documents are also going to be safe. So if you're trying to use such backup and secured procedures, you're in a safe place. So this way, any indication of any risk to your clients by using this technology, you're going to be in a more safe place, and you're letting your clients know ahead on the retainer letter or any client-facing document very clearly that this is the medium you're using, this is the medium of communication, or this is what you're probably using as a secured backup plan. So making sure they are aware of, you're indicating such risks that are associated with each electronic medium that you're using. You could have a phone call conversation with them, you could have a Zoom call conversation with them, you could, anything that is going to be prone to any such risks, you need to be making sure clearly on an agreement so they are aware of it, and that they will be able to, otherwise not bring it up as a concern or issue in future. Now, while, of course, we spoke about, reviewing your technology and making sure you manage your client updates from time to time, we are also concerned about, what kind of practice management are you using? What kind of, whether is it only a practice management, or is it also legal accounting and practice management, making sure that you choose a technology, you choose a software that does all of this, that will lead you to a audit-ready environment on a daily basis. That's what we spoke in the first few slides, you remember, where you have to be audit-ready on a day-to-day basis, anytime, anywhere. Recording events as and when they happen is your slogan, making sure that you are at par with your bank on a day-to-day basis, recording your financial records, bank records as close as possible, like I said, on a day-to-day basis. And why not? You can, if you're someone who likes to be so disciplined, you can even do reconciliation on a weekly basis. Why wait till the end of the month to do? I know it's easy said than done, but if you are someone who are watching your bank records as close as possible, it makes your reconciliation a simple task. And you need to maintain all these above documents in the software to make sure that you have a good workflow. And you know what, as I already mentioned this, I think in one of our previous CPD sessions, that it's finally, everything is about compliance. If you are compliant, the Law Society audit is going to be, close to nothing, because you already have everything that you need, right? From your compliance documents, from a practice review standpoint, from an accounting or a financial review, financial management standpoint, from overall client matter management standpoint. So everything is going to save you time to audits and also help you avoid penalties and sanctions that Law Society would impose on you, and ensuring that you're compliant, and the accountability that helps you track down your business. And analytics is purely for your internal purposes. You're able to assess health of your practice at any time, and you have the ease of use. If you're using a program like uLaw, it's going to be available for you, any from anywhere. Rather, you're not going to take that one system with you. You're not going to be, bothered about accessing it from your home or your office or from travel somewhere. It's just about ease of use, saves you a lot of time. You don't have to wait till tomorrow to get into your office to check on what bills are pending. You always sit at over a cup of tea and try to work on your other stuff that is non-legal work, because end of the day, all these that you're doing is definitely not your real work. They're non-legal work. There are some things that you need to do to manage your practice, keep yourself compliant, and at the same time, make sure that you are ready for an audit. Could be any time. So there are a few of these links that I will probably enter in the chat window after the session is done. I request all of you to wait for a minute or two and copy these links, and that way, you would all be happy to access it. Maybe I could just put in over here, start putting it over here. But we're almost towards end of the webinar, and for the ones who are not probably a uLaw user, I request you to visit our uLawPractice account, our website, uLaw.io, and sign up for a free 30-day trial. And if you're a uLaw user, existing uLaw user, I request all of you to follow what we've discussed today in the last few minutes, and try to implement it in your day-to-day practice. You're never too late to start following all of these. So you're definitely within the time range. Every day is a new day, so try to start off with the compliances for your Law Society audit from day one, which could be even today, and make sure that you are able to practice them on a daily basis. So that way, you're not needing to go through this just right before the audit. May it be spot audit, there's some checklist links that I'm entering here for all of you from what I had. So I request all of you to kind of look into it and try to make the best use of resources that we brought in front of you. And there are a lot of these bookkeeping guidelines and audit guidelines that I'm pasting here. So please take about 5 minutes, post this session now, and if you can copy it, would be best. If you cannot, you can all reach out to us on support@uLawPractice.com, and we'll be happy to reach out to you and give you further resources that you need for your practice or audit purposes. All right, so we're almost at top of the hour, 2:59. I have 5 minutes more for all of you for any questions that you have today. There could be new entrepreneurs, there could be experienced paralegals, lawyers, assistants, anyone or accountants attending today's session. Please shoot out your question. Anything that I am aware of, I would be happy to assist you all. For the ones who keep coming in on a weekly basis to show your support to us, thank you so much for coming in every Friday afternoon at 2 p.m. It's so lovely talking to all of you. I know it's always one way. We're such a way that we are having to mute all of you. Someday I will make it a two-way meeting, and would love to hear all of you as well. And Stephanie will be sharing a few links that, it'll be really nice that, there are some questions. Can I confirm this is 1 hour professionalism? Yes. This is a 1 hour professionalism CPD credit. Just FYI, uLaw doesn't give any substantiative hours. uLaw does only CPD that is available for professionalism credits. Steph, could you please share the attendance link here once more? So people who have come in a little later would be able to give their attendance. Sabrina, thank you. I have a question for this CPD. Is it 1 hour substantiative professionalism? It's going to be a 1 hour of professionalism CPD credits. All right. So let me do one thing. Let me stop the recording just so that, we don't have to go too long a recording. So just for convenience sake, I'm going to be stopping recording and thanking all of you that this recording will be available on as early as Monday on our YouTube platform. So if you are someone who wants to go through what you need to be aware of to get ready for your Law Society audit, I request all of you to go through this recording, which will be available on as early as Monday. And for any questions, if you're being audited, you can always shoot out an email on support@uLawPractice.com. And lastly, If you have anything from today's webinar to be discussed here, I'm available for another max 5 minutes to take any questions. And hopefully see you all again in the next session, which is next Friday. The topic for next session is available on our on our webinar platform. I can show you where you need to go for that. And thanking all of you for joining in today. Please stay back to copy all the links or to make a note of all the links. Thank you.